Okay, so let's talk about our part 3 for our querying video and the work we're going to do for that. Okay, so here I have already opened in a new tab my markdown file for the instruction that I'll cover in a minute. I have the video open about in that section, and I have my code space going. One of the first things I played with after the last couple of videos was how to open the terminal with the keyboard. And it just made my life a little easier, right? So for me, that was, and now what will happen here is your operating system will possibly have different keystrokes here, right? So just to let you kind of know that, right? And you can, as I've talked about before, in this instance, I already had one. Also, you can see that it defaults to the repo and not the subdirectory. So let's get started. All right, so the thing this week is you're going to create this W2 folder. And as I've said in here, it's going to be at the same level as the W1. So let's just show you. I've already done this, but I want to give you a little heads up because sometimes creating these folders in the right location can be a little tricky based on what you have selected, and even that can be a little tricky to see. So in this case, I have nothing selected, right? So if I was to just do a new folder, it does actually go to the right location into that. But if I happen to, and I hit escape there, if I happen to be in week 1, right, and I was like, okay, I'm going to hit a new folder, then it's going to place it underneath week 1, which is not what I want. And sometimes it's just kind of hard to see. I'd have to go back here, but when I do that, it rolls up everything else, okay? So you might go, well, if you don't, again, your highlight here is telling you your current selection in the folder. So it's a little hard to kind of figure this out sometimes, but once you see it, you'll like go, okay. So what you want to do, and you can do this by either clicking the README file, and what that does is it actually selects that root level, okay, that beginning from that repo level. And so here when I hit that, now I've already created the week 2, but as an example, right, if I was creating a week 3, then it would go there. Okay, so from here on out, I'm going to assume when you're creating these that you're using lowercase letters, that you're putting them at the same level, and hopefully you won't, if you need help, reach out. Okay, so the other thing here is in this week 2, and there's a couple ways you could do this. I want you to take this ending file that you have, and you can either copy it, right? You could do a copy and then come down here and then do a paste. You could do that. And so as long as you have that querying file, .md file in there as well. And you might think at this point that you actually should bring over, because we're going to continue the long list, but I'm going to actually show you something, and I've been considering setting up a folder just for the databases that we're using them, but for now, I just want to show you kind of something else, because again, you've heard me talk about the more you learn about command line, the more beneficial I think there'll be times you'll need it in your life, okay? So right now my current directory, as PWD, I can see it, but it's always good to show it, right, is in the root of my repo, right? And again, I know in the beginning I said folders and repos look similar as far as structure, but they aren't as far as the way they operate for the version control, okay? Now, what we'd want to do is, in this case, we want to go into W2 once that folder is created, okay? So when we're walking through this week's work, right, and I'm just going to make this a little larger and do it here. The thing you could do is rather than move this or duplicate it, right? Now the reason I like duplicating the query markdown file is we're adding a little bit every week to it. I like that. But with the database file, we're not really doing anything to it except querying it, writing SQL statements against it. Okay? So what you can do here is you can type SQLite 3. And now what you can tell SQLite is how to find that long list. So given that I'm in this S2, I want to go back. Dot dot is the way the operating system, when you do that, it's like, okay, let me look back one directory. So if it looks back one directory, it's going to look at the root, the private, right? But then I want to say go to week 1 and then go and open longlist.db. Oh, sorry, not long, longlist.db. Okay, so when you're doing this for this week, you can do that. Now we're going to end up doing a problem set, so we'll not do it on the next one, but for this one that you're working on now, you can. And so, boom, now you're in there, and now you can start writing your commands. Okay, I'm going to get out for just a second here because I also want to show you if for some reason I'm going to back up one directory. It's that same cd dot dot backs up one. If I was to run that SQLite here, what's your guess on if it would work or not? And the answer is, right, it looks like it works. But actually, if I do a select, let's just see this, right? Star from, let's just say, right, give me everything, right? Oh, forgot to put the semicolon. It can't find it, okay? And that's because the way I started the session with SQLite, yeah, I must have an error because of that. Because of this, because of my current location, if for some reason I was there and I wanted to run this, then I could run it like this because that W1 is at that same level that it doesn't have to go anywhere except its current directory and do it from there. Now, you can do it either way. I'm just kind of giving you both. And really, this is understanding the way we talk about how to navigate with commands our folder structures. Okay? Okay, so the other thing, and I'm going to go ahead and do it the right way because I think it's the better way to do it. Do W2, right? I'm going to use my up arrow. I'm going to go back to the command that I want, which is back up one directory and run that just to make sure I have it, right? Now, by the way, I can also do that. I can also run my up arrow, and that's a command. It's one of the ones you're going to learn. I was just looking for the base one. Okay, I guess I have to write it. That's can be true. It's interesting because the history on those things aren't always they don't always give you the one you want to find. Hit semicolon, cool, I got everything, so I am good to go there. Okay, now the other thing this week, and I talk about it in the file here, and this is what I just talked about with making sure you're in there, is also, right, continue. Oh, yeah, so in this week you're going to learn a new line away because you're going to end up writing some rather large SQL statements. And this is really good to know. So this is a preview of something he talks about already, but I think seeing it beforehand might be helpful. So if I was to now, right, if I'm in here and I was to do select, right, but for some, and I've done this multiple times, where I accidentally hit enter, this dot dot greater than actually indicates that, hey, you didn't terminate your SQL statement correctly, okay? So I could write, from here I could write star, I could hit it again, I could write from, I could hit it again, right? I could write long list, right? And I could hit it again and do that. So that is just allowing you to continue writing a longer. Now, the example I gave you is probably not the best one, but I think it gives you the idea, right? And you can still continue this week. I have found this really helpful. I want to show maybe soon in attendance how you can make this stick. We'll talk about that, using that box. Okay, so now that we have that, I just want to show you because I'm not going to go over the instruction this week in as much detail as I've been doing, right? But in this case, you have how many commits. So you're going to have proof of work. So we're doing that same thing where we're copying. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. I forgot. I didn't put the comment in here, but I'm glad I thought about this. So as you're doing these proof of work, so you have proof of work 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So you can see that in my workspace. So I have 4 of these. So as you're creating each one and you're doing your commits and you're starting your next one of the things that can happen, like if I scroll up here and I happen to be ending my 1 and I was starting on my 2, but then when I go back to select, it's going to be hard for me to see, oh yeah, where did I end 1 and begin 1, okay? So one thing I've noticed I did, and I kind of recommend you do this, because you would think if you just do Control L, it clears it. But guess what happens if I scroll down? In my case, and with my mouse, it actually is still there. So one of the things I could do is just go ahead and drop, right? I could go ahead and I could add another one. All right, so probably what I would do is drop this, do that nice little keyboard shortcut. Right, I have my bash here, right? I'd probably add another one. Now, why would I add another one? Because that way when I want to go back and run my git work or do my git workflow commands, I could still have that here and I wouldn't have to drop out of my SQLite. So now if I do my, let's see, yeah, okay, so now, by the way, look at this line. Is this line correct based on my current directory? No, it's not, right? Because I'm in that, so I'd have to go here for that to be correct. But again, the point of me showing you this was not that. The point of this, if I scroll down, the only history I have is my current session. And then when I'm ready to do my git workflow, I can go back here to do my git workflow. Okay, so I just want to give you some tips for workflow because workflow is really helpful. Over time, you learn that, you learn techniques to kind of focus more on the work and less on actually showing or, and all of it's part of learning in my own experience. Okay, so this week we learned some great stuff, right? So of course we start with the, we've already talked a little about the where, but we look at the where, the not, actually we look at operators too. I talk about capturing those operators, the not equal to, and there's 2 ways to do the not equal. And then, right, so where it gets a little of, I realize I got a syntax error there, but where it gets a little sometimes mixed, and you'll see this, I've tried to capture this the best I can in the instruction, right, is that you do the work, you have your file, and then you listen to the questions, add any questions that you may have encountered, right? And if you don't have any, then capture the question asked in the query, because sometimes it's 1 question, sometimes it's 2, and sometimes he'll go back and actually show, Carter will go back and show, the example of answering the question. That's always great to code along as well. And you can note in your file if you happen to have one of those commits that you actually just went back and coded, okay? All right, so then you do your commit, you continue on, right? You do your, now in this case, I also wanted you to take a few notes on your understanding of how they're used. So in this case, the null and is not null was there, right? So this is clearing the terminal output. This is also where you could use the little trick I talked about, right? And we're introducing the idea of like here and the %sign and the underscore to do to say where based on a string and based how the string is in the field itself. So that's great to learn about as well, right? And so now terminal. So we go all the way this time, right? So we go all the way to 4601, okay? And then that's your commit history, and then this is the way it's graded. I gotta fix that. All right, I hope this helps you, and I hope you have fun with it. So now I'm going to go work on the next item, which I believe is going to be the first part of the problem set. So I'll talk to you later.